so generous to you. He never answers any of my prayers. I don't know why. What did I do? What is wrong with me? Please just tell me so maybe I can get better. I don't want to end up like Mom, or I want to be dancing up on the screen like the pretty girls in the pictures. I want what they have so badly. To be perfect. To be loved from as many people as possible to make up for all my time spent suffering. Sometimes I wake in the middle of the night and the fear washes over me, because what if this is it? What if this is right where I belong?
Hello and happy Tuesday. I hope everyone has had an amazing weekend as we move into the month of May. Warm summer days for those of us that experience summer around these months. Today, I want to talk about self-awareness. The clip that I played in the beginning was from a horror flick called Pearl. I know some of you might have heard of it, but if you're not a horror movie enthusiast, then I understand. I've never personally seen the movie because I don't really like slasher films. And psychological slasher films are a bit too much for me. But I stumbled on that clip on Instagram, and in that scene in particular, Pearl is having a moment of clarity in her actions. Reminiscent of her past life and where she, felt trapped and didn't, she felt like she was trapped in a life that she didn't want. Obviously, many people go through this and don't end up as serial killers, so we'll put that aside as I want to talk about the overall moment of clarity as she's talking to her sister-in-law, where her mind kind of muddied the person in front of her and kind of morphed into her husband. I went to the comments of this monologue, as one does, and I saw a lot of overall shame placed upon Pearl's character, dismissing her quote-unquote meaningless reasons for finally snapping and killing off an entire cast of people. Reasonably so, right? Fuck the serial killers. Not literally. But, we have the never-ending debate on how a serial killer actually becomes a serial killer. We look at Dahmer's reason for killing and, it didn't really seem all that valid, because he only came from a quote-unquote mildly dysfunctional familial background, but overall had a loving and relatively accepting father. But seemingly the rejection of his mother, among other things, was speculated to set him off, coupled with the guilt of, latent homosexuality at a young age. It got me thinking overall about the way the mind copes with what we know is wrong. Because even Dahmer, if you've read interviews with him, he knew what he was doing was wrong, but never really knew what the feeling of true remorse was, because he really loved the power that he had over his victims. It's like this, the mind's battle with the soul. One knows what's happening. One knows that what's happening is wrong, but it can't make sense of the compulsion to want to do something as wrong as hurting another human being in that way. I'll put it this way in the plainest sense. When I saw Pearl's monologue, this is what I understood. It's the concept of self-awareness and the mind's battle with the soul, right? The mind is sick, and the soul is trying to understand why the mind can't help but be the way it is. It's quite sad. And while many believe there shouldn't be any sympathy for Pearl's character, or more specifically, serial killers, right? Understanding that sick people can't simply stop being sick on their own without somebody forcing them to stop, either in the ways of medicine or physical intervention like prison, especially at the capacity of a serial killer or a person that has a compulsion to do harm. You can't help but feel sorry for the fact that they were either born that way or became that way through varying circumstances. Some people's mountains may look like molehills to other people because we were born, the people that are looking at these mountains, that look like molehills to us, because we were born with the healthier mind than the person who's compelled to do very sick things. I mean, it doesn't change the very prominent fact that the mountain, for some people, will never cease to look like anything but a mountain to that person, regardless of how small it may seem to us. I love movie debates and character debates, and that's why I'm really taking the opportunity to dissect the psychology behind Pearl's monologue. This doesn't mean to say that we should in any way condone sick behaviors that cause harm to other people, but it is meant to say that self-awareness is extremely powerful and also kind of confusing, because it feels like we still don't know much about it apart from varying ideas and categories. It's more or less seen as a rare quality, self-awareness. The true self-awareness is seen as an incredibly rare quality in people. Something around 10 to 15% are genuinely considered self-aware. This is because self-awareness requires individuals to have the ability to reflect on their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, and to be honest with themselves about their strengths and weaknesses. It also requires individuals to be open to feedback from others and to be willing to make changes based on that feedback. What's more shocking is that overall, knowing that self-awareness is not very high among a regular population, it's also not incredibly high among serial killers. But what's shocking is that those that are more or less self-aware tend to turn themselves in or do something to be caught, to stop themselves, almost like an intervention of the soul, right? The soul's just like, okay, I'm going to try to get this motherfucker caught. But when it comes to the complexities of self-awareness in ourselves, it's something we can develop, like a muscle that needs to be exercised. We can't necessarily grow that muscle if we ourselves never flex it. That's why I push self-reflection and really looking at yourself and your behaviors and understanding why it is we react to certain stimulus the way we do if it's negative, and how we can stray away from it if that's what we want. Understanding or trying to understand why people do certain things will also aid you in increasing your empathy, because self-awareness and empathy kind of go hand in hand. Trying to understand that it's difficult to understand, but self-awareness and looking at yourself, understanding and being able to understand your flaws where they exist, right? But the trouble goes further to say that people really don't want to see themselves as they are, and that's where the progress of self-awareness kind of comes to a halt, because the first steps to self-awareness is looking at yourself and understanding your flaws, understanding you, being you, right? As I spoke about in my last episode. The work of self-awareness is very useful. Understanding like, okay, yeah, the way I'm reacting is kind of fucked up. Or yeah, the way I'm acting is kind of pretentious or self-absorbed or whatever. I often talk about how our actions will always affect, the people around us. It, depending on how you are with people is what you're going to get back from the world. Something as small as, I don't know, cutting somebody off, maliciously, might come to bite you in the butt later, but all that being said, self-awareness and understanding your actions, it's important to really hold your actions, no matter how small, holding your actions up to your face and understanding why we feel that way. Why am I upset today? Why am I taking it out on a person if you're taking it out on another person, right? Why am I doing these things? And understanding why you're doing those things and how you can work to improve those actions is going to give you more, what's the word? Self-fulfillment. It's going to give you more opportunities at happiness, because I know that I'm in a space where I'm trying to move away from toxic behavior, where I might react in a certain way or say something out of impulse, just like immediately, like the fuck off switch kind of goes on in my mind, like fuck off. And I had a moment where, I was talking to a family member and they said something to me that really, I don't want to say triggered, but kind of, it just pissed me off a little bit because, in my mind, I was just like, all right, kettle me black, you're a hypocrite. And in my mind, it was crazy because I kind of had this pause of self-reflection, right? Where, this person said something that I didn't like, right? This family member, somebody that I love, said something that I didn't like. And all these mean things immediately were kind of formulating in my mind. This harsh critique of this person, right, was forming in my mind, like, oh, well, X, Y, and Z. And usually, or in the past, I would have taken that opportunity, right, in the heat of the moment to say those things to this family member, because that's the relationship that we have that I am trying to break, because I don't want to perpetuate that kind of behavior. And I know that my words hold weight with this family member. So saying something mean to this person, something to break down their character or try to psychoanalyze their character, is not only not helpful, it's hurtful, because I'm doing it with an intent to show them themselves, but in a malicious way. So I'm holding up a mirror to maliciously show them, like, look at yourself, but in a mean way, right? And when it comes to those types of moments, you have to approach people with compassion and love. When you want somebody to be aware of negative reactions, you don't want to do that from a place of anger. And I've tried to do that often, and I can tell you right now that 10 out of 10 times it has backfired, and it has not been a good experience. For me anyways, at least not long term. So when that moment came, right, and I had these thoughts in my head where I was just like, man, fuck you and fuck this and fuck off and all these things in my head, right, going on, where I was just like, I want to say incredibly mean things to you right now. I just stepped back and I told my family member, you know what, I'm going to step away from this conversation for now. Please don't talk to me. And I stepped away. And I didn't say anything more about it. I vented to other family members about it. Like, okay, this is why I feel upset. And, I can't talk to this person until I know that I'm not angry with them anymore. Because then I'm going to say things that I can't take back. And I've seen the weight of my words when I've said things to this family member and I can't take it back, because it'll always be on their mind. It'll always weigh on their mind. And that's why I equate the imagery of, words, right? Harsh words to bullets in a gun. You can't unshoot a gun. You can't unsay your words. Once that message has been spoken and those ears have received that information, right? That brain has processed all that stimulus, right? That external stimulus. It can't undo that. It has been fired off already. You know what I mean? And if you wouldn't be so quick to shoot somebody in the face, right? Maybe think about things before you say it. And there's a lot of younger people out there that are realizing the consequence of their actions. There's also people my age and older that are still trying to learn the consequences of their actions when they say and they do things without thinking, without really reflecting. And I know people are going to say, well, it's not that deep. And it's just like, no, it really is. You should take what you say and you do with a lot of care, especially if it's to another person, especially if it's to yourself. Take a lot of care in the things that you say before you say it. And it might take a while to respond, right? Especially if you're processing, right? But sometimes saying nothing is better than saying a lot of mean shit that you can't take back, even in anger, even the height of anger, because, it's just, it is not beneficial. So exercising that self-awareness muscle and understanding yourself and empathy. And, like I said, I like debating movie characters and, morals and all that stuff because, it's an exercise of understanding, and it's an exercise of dissection of emotions and how we feel and the different stages of awareness that we go through, however fleeting it may be. Because if you notice, some people might go through fleeting moments of self-awareness after they come down from a height of anger where they're just like, oh yeah, well, if it isn't the consequences of my actions, right? So, I really I feel like going through these exercises with myself, right, really help me understand myself a little bit better and help me exercise awareness of those around me, right? But anyways, I'll leave that on a good note. And if you enjoy slashers, and Mia Goth in particular, because people are obsessed with her, almost as obsessed as Zendaya, I've heard the movie itself is pretty wild, considering the intense dialogue. If I had the stomach for slashers beyond the Scream movies, I'd totally watch it, but it's not for me. I'll stick with my paranormal ghosty flicks, and, again, don't forget, if you like blogs, don't forget to subscribe to my new blog, The Daily Potato. It's in my links and all my social media. I'll be talking about all sorts of things of a spiritual and fun nature. But anyways, I love you guys all so much. Have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye now.